Welcome to How to Yu-Gi-Oh!
Let's explain card roles returning.
Chapter 1. Hello there, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Phantom Knight's Ancient Cloak, and now with my... All I've got to say is that let's get on with the rest of this video.
So, let's talk about it. When we talk about card roles in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I talk about it, this is something I want to say that has really changed this year, I think, and it's something I've noticed. The roles of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has changed for the worse since 2017. Since 2017, Konami. We can say really, this is when it sped up monster effects and their usage in the game sped up. The abilities that monsters and monster effects have had in the game have been a predominant thing, and monsters have just been fulfilling the roles and doing everything. A monster has been as good as a spell and a trap. This has been something that has made the game faster, has caused Yu-Gi-Oh as well to become combo slop, and just has caused all manners of negative things that we know for Yu-Gi-Oh today. One of the issues that the previous format of XYZ and Synchro Era were so good is because monsters, spells, and traps, each card category had a role and fulfilled that role. For example, you had breakthrough skill. Breakthrough skill is a normal trap that negated a monster, right? You didn't Effect Veiler didn't really exist in early Synchro Era. This meant that you didn't have a hand trap to negate monster effects. It was a trap. A trap's role was to negate and disrupt. Spells were there to search and destroy back row. Do you see? And then monsters were there to put monsters had effects to summon your monsters from the extra deck. The point is each card type had a role, had a function, meaning that they were all useful. Now, did we have broken cards at that time? Absolutely. But one of the reasons why it was so balanced, why it is such a beloved era of Yu-Gi-Oh, and why these times are considered peak Yu-Gi-Oh is because each card type fulfilled a role. Each card type wasn't outshined by another. Traps were useful, spells were useful, and monsters were useful. Everything was useful. It was a trifecta of the three card types, and each had their own role to play when it came to playing the game. But fast forward to 3 years, 2011, 4 to 5 years after this, in 2017, and monsters and Konami has made monsters fulfill all the roles that spells and traps were doing. This has meant that this definitely skewed the view of what spells and traps just did not feel useful. And this is something we have felt, especially as players. You look at just tournament lists from 2017 till now, name like deck lists that just have any spells or traps that are useful. It's very rare, few and far between, especially even in the side deck. It's just not happening, right? So, what do I mean by this year? When I look at this year and I look at the cards that have come out, one thing that stands very clear, especially with the card releases and everything else, is that we've had we've had good monsters that have come out in sets. This is usually the norm, and in fact, in most years since 2017, good monsters are the only thing we get in card sets, and spells and traps are rare. Sometimes we would get good spells and traps, but majority of the time you just get good monsters, and that was the end of that. You look at this year, we've had good monsters have come out. We have good spells that have come out, and we have a good traps that are coming out. Whether it's Solemn Accusation as a good trap that is coming out, has come out earlier this year. Later on this year, we will have the Mind Mirror Force trap. And we will also have the Mind Scan. Mind Scan is quite toxic, sure, but it is a good trap. You look at spells, and the choices of good spells are just, it's wow. Whether it's Illusion Gate that came out earlier this year, or we have Forbidden Crown that came out earlier this year. How about Pot of Sloth that again comes out earlier this year? We have later on in the year, we've got Ultimate Sky that's coming out. You have Spatial Trunade that's coming out. Let's talk about monsters. We've got Gallant Thief that has come out. That is coming out this year. We have the Dragonuity Georges that has already come out this year. And this is just part of the example. This is just one or two monsters that have coming out. Let's not even get started on Blitzclick, an archetype that has come out this year. And much more. Cool Tune, again, that has come out this year. Again, to do with good monsters. You can already see what I'm trying to say. Every single card type has good stuff that have come out this year. And what this means is that already that there is, especially, and I noticed this in discussions, especially this year, is that when it came to looking at good cards, when it came to getting the cards that you'd want, the conversation was much more balanced. If it was 2025, we would be talking about, all throughout the year, we only talked about just really good monsters that have come out. We never talked about any good spells or any good traps. This year, the conversation has been very nuanced. We've talked about good spells that are coming out, we've talked about good traps that are coming out, and we've talked about good monsters that are coming out. Very nuanced. Every card type has a role to play. Every card type has their shining stars and their worst offenders. And this, to me, fixes the issue, is a slow fix to the issue that the game has at this current moment. Spells, monsters, and traps need to feel relevant again and need to fulfill the roles they need to fulfill. The biggest issue we have is that spells and traps don't really matter in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they haven't mattered for a long time, especially when it comes to deck building. Hand traps, which are purely monsters, have mattered far more and have a far bigger importance than they should be having. This is a problem and this needs to change. And I'm seeing with this year, with the new cards we're getting, there is a balance of cards that we're getting, and they each have their role to play, and each of them have significance. You can't say that Mind Mirror Force is not just as good as the Ultimate Sky, as you can see in front of you, which is not just as good as the World Gallant Thief. Each of these cards have negation effects. Each of these cards do have something related to negation, but it is spread between three card types. This means that there is a balance. Now, am I someone, I know I've said this before, that I am someone who hates negation. And a lot of players don't like negation. Absolutely. But here's the thing. Negation in the early times of Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially at the peak time of Yu-Gi-Oh!, when it was in the Synchro era and XYZ era, it had its place on traps only. Traps were cards that negated in Yu-Gi-Oh! It wasn't something that every card type had. It wasn't in monsters, it wasn't in spells, and it certainly wasn't in monsters in the early Synchro and XYZ era, right? So we need to get back to that again. We need to have spells and traps get back the roles that they have lost, regain what they lost, and get back to where they were before. Now I feel we are getting there. Especially when I look at when you see Ultimate Sky, to me, Ultimate Sky is what I think a spell should be. Right? It should be powerful, it should have a lot of text. But I think monsters shouldn't be having a lot of text. I think spells and traps deserve to have a lot of text because they are spells and traps. They are powerful, that's what they're supposed to do, and I feel monsters should be much simpler and should have a much simpler role. Not to say that monsters should just, that power creep shouldn't be a thing. I feel it should be a thing, but power creep should be placed on spells and traps, and monsters should only have the role of being summoned from the extra deck and just doing extra deck things. Spells and traps should be for removal and negation of monster effects, right? Now, again, I don't like negation, but I think like if these roles are tied to, to traps where it was before, or spells, and not to monsters, I think we're heading to the right direction. And that's all I've got to say about this.
Final chapter.
So here I am at the conclusion. And all I've got to say is that this is looking to be interesting for Yu-Gi-Oh! Going forward, for the game going forward. And all I've got to say is that I am really admiring this change of things from Konami. Whether it's the hand trap that we're getting by the end of the year and all of that. The cost of cards being added on to things, as I've talked about in a previous video, but most importantly, card types getting their roles back again. That's one thing I'm extremely excited for because it breaks the lock we've had on the game for the longest time. That spells and traps just aren't useful in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think this has been a dilemma. This has been a big cancer to the game. Why do we have a lot of combo decks? Why do we have a lot of slop? Why do we have a lot of just unfair nonsense? I mean, partly you can say that, the effects of cards, effects of cards are broken, but majority is that monsters are fulfilling a role that spells and traps are supposed to fulfill. They do everything, and that is part of the problem. And what we need to do now going forward is retrain the roles that spells and traps have. So the future that needs to going forward is that monsters, I think, should only, again, as I've said before, go back to that Zexal and Synchro time. Just be able to have summoning conditions to summon stuff from the extra deck or main deck. That's it. Spells and traps should focus on searching and recovery, and also removing and being a removal of monsters and the back row. Traps should be the disruption. Those should be the negation and all those other things that we like to see in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's all I've got to say. Tune in next time as I'll talk about more things on this channel. Hope to see you soon.
We come to the end of this video. So, as I like to say, you are one step closer to becoming a Yu-Gi-Oh! Master. My fate, right, is in your hands.